Welcome to Cardinal Points. My name is Ed Cardinal, and today it is my pleasure to have Peggy Sealfon, who is an internationally known personal development coach, award-winning author, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, and podcaster. Blending trainings in diverse Eastern and Western traditions, she is most noted for her effective strategies in reducing anxiety, stress, trauma, and fears to improve well-being in every aspect of life. And I was just saying to Peg, it's synchronistic. She knows my sister, and we recently met for the first time down in Naples, Florida. And I was telling her about some of the things I was doing with podcasting, some of the topics. And one of the topics I chose for this week for my Facebook Live was stress. And as I noted in my introduction about Peggy, that's one of the things that she helps people with. And we were also talking about if we thought people were stressed out before the last 2 years, that has heightened dramatically and tremendously. So there's a big need to address this topic. And I'm so grateful to have Peggy on today so we can help people, so we can educate people about what they can do about the stress in their lives. So welcome, Peggy.
Thank you so much, Ed. It's really a joy to be here with you. And truly, it was great to meet you synchronistically, as you say. And this is certainly an important topic right now. And as we were talking a moment ago, before we started airing, just the fact that so many people are at such a heightened state of stress right now because of everything that's been going on in the world. And so many people don't even realize that they're at that level until something terrible happens. So
Right. So in the awareness that I've been bringing into my own life, but also in educating myself about stress, there's a lot of different reasons why people feel stress in their lives. It could be life changes, divorce, marriage, maybe an addition of a child, the death of a loved one. It also could be health issues, and I think that's what we're seeing a lot of now with this pandemic. But also from this time comes the financial pressures and financial stress. So those are sort of the major ones that I see. Also, people unhappy in their jobs, or their work hours are outrageous, so they can't take time for themselves. So is this kind of what you see in your practice?
Oh my gosh, yes. First of all, though, Ed, I really want to point out that some stress is good stress. You know, when you have a baby, that's
right.
very positive, uplifting. When you get a new job, it is stressful, just that adjustment, but it's a positive stress. But I think, what we see and what I see in my practice over the last few years in particular is a heightened level of stress that unfortunately, people haven't learned to cope or even be aware of the fact that they're in stress. And so some of the key things that do happen when someone's in a chronic level of stress is that their body stops working optimally the way it's supposed to. And so stress responses actually put our digestion in hiatus. It suppresses our digestion. It suppresses our immune system. So for someone who's getting a lot of headaches or a lot of indigestion or digestive issues, or they're getting a lot of colds or they're getting ill a lot, those are really key signals to hopefully help trigger mindfulness about the fact that, wait, maybe I need to address my stress. And there are many ways to really mitigate the stresses. But first, you've got to be aware that you are stressed and accept that you are. Too many people, as we were talking earlier, just power through. No, I got to get this done. I can't stop. And they don't even realize the level that they get to. In fact, let me share a quick story with you. One of my clients, I sort of tasked her with taking a time out every day just for 3 minutes to do some just very quiet meditation, just to kind of interrupt these patterns of stress. And so she knew I was going to check in with her and make sure that she'd been doing it. And this one particular day that I was checking in, she really didn't feel like doing it, but she knew I was going to ask and she didn't want to lie to me. So she did it. And she couldn't believe how much more relaxed she felt after she took that 3 minutes. So my point is, sometimes we don't realize that we're stressed. We're suddenly getting knots in our shoulders, but we haven't really paid attention to, wait, what's causing that? Why am I uptight? You know,
Right.
what is it?
Right. And you know, you bring up a good point about we wait too late. And as I mentioned to you when I met with you, my focus is men, is helping men. And I think they are the biggest culprits of not paying attention to the messages of their bodies, not reaching out for help. It's some of the conditioning that we've had culturally as men. So very important, particularly for everyone, but particularly for men, to really pay attention, not be afraid to ask for help. And the other thing that you mentioned is that response in the body to stress. And it makes a lot of sense because the nervous system gets into that fight or flight response. And so the hormones and chemicals are released that are going to create, if it happens over time and chronically, that it's going to create, you know, heart disease, digestive issues, as you said, because the blood is getting shunted to other areas of the body and the digestion can't happen optimally.
Exactly. And for a lot of women, they crave carbohydrates. They gain weight because of that cortisol, that stress hormone that's being released. So, you know, they tend to do emotional eating, but a lot of that is also just the biological function because they're up too much and they're stressed and they're trying to manage that stress level, but unconsciously rather than consciously. And I think that's such a great work that you're doing, because I think you're right. Men tend not to really pay attention. They're the ones who really power through more than anyone and feel like, well, I'm not broken, I'm okay. And it's not about being broken or fixing something. It's really about performing at your best, feeling your best, mental clarity, as well as physical abilities. Because if you're working out and you're stressed, you're not getting the really best benefit in your musculature from that workout if you're dealing with stress. And I think earlier you mentioned really an important factor that we're all working with, especially as a result of the pandemic, is that work-life balance. So many people started working at home. That created some other levels of stresses, you know, and it's really about being able to be more adaptive to situations and also being able to really be more engaged in our relationships. I think sometimes that is the compromised area as we're on that road to success of working harder and doing all of those kinds of things. We're not balancing all the different aspects of our lives, and that creates a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm. That brings up a great point, Peggy, and it reminds me that stress is very individual. Also, would you agree? Everyone's response to these different issues that create stress in people's lives is going to be different. How people respond, how they react is very individual. Would you agree?
Absolutely, but biologically, our stress response, whatever the trigger, yes, different, and the level of stress and anxiety can be very different from person to person. But the main thing is that as we go into that stress response, whatever the trigger is, we were actually biologically created to just use that for our survival. And it's just supposed to be there for a short time till we survive, and then we're supposed to recover. And here's the challenge: we're not going through the recovery time. And so our bodies are aging and they're shutting down and they're not functioning the way they really can.
Mm-hmm. We've discussed a lot of some of the physical aspects of stress. Also, there's the emotional, your specialty, anxiety, depression. Those are big factors that come out of people being stressed in their life.
Well, absolutely. And so much of the stress levels, when we are stressed, we tend not to eat right. We tend not to exercise properly. All these other things get compromised. And that affects brain function, can lead to anxiety, depression. The brain health is clearly compromised. We don't have mental clarity. When we're stressed, we tend not to sleep well. That is we could talk just about sleep. As we mentioned, because that's such a huge area that people really don't pay enough attention to. And especially when they're trying to get projects done or work things done or family things done. Oh, I'll go to sleep a little later. It's no big deal. It is a big deal. Sleep time is so important for the restoration of body and mind. And there's certain hours during the nighttime hours when different parts of the body actually regenerate and rejuvenate. And so if you're compromising that sleep time, you're compromising, once again, your vitality, the way you function, the way you can show up in the world. And not only do you not feel good, but you can't be a very good service to anyone else.
Exactly. Actually, sleep was my topic last week, and I talked about this. That's 3 phases of sleep, and we cycle through those phases every 90 minutes, and we should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. If we miss any part of those phases, then, like you said, it's going to affect us physically, emotionally. So sleep is so important.
So I'll share a quick tip with you if you'd like. One of my
absolutely.
secrets.
Absolutely.
One of my secrets is from one of the ancient wisdom teachings, and I trained with the world-renowned yogi master Amrita Sai, or Sri Amritji. And my first training was in Yoga Nidra, and I could not believe what that did for me. And Yoga Nidra is a yogic sleep. You literally lie down and you're guided through a very deep relaxation experience. And studies have shown that doing this for 20 or 30 minutes is equivalent to 3 to 4 hours of deep restorative sleep. So for instance, last night I've been in these tennis matches, and so I'm getting a little aches and pains at night, and so it's keeping me up. And so actually I woke up in the middle of the night last night and I went and did my 30 minutes of Yoga Nidra, and I feel great today. So I don't recommend it in replacement of really good quality sleep, but it is a great additive to your toolbox to have something like Yoga Nidra. And I have a lot of recordings that I make available online and so forth that can really help someone restore and renew. And I even use it for tennis players, for athletes to restore, like between matches in 20 minutes. They can sit on the sidelines, just listen to this recording, and boom, they feel better. So it's so important to tune into the opportunities that we have to make our lives better, to feel healthier, to be more productive, and to be able to really, I'm so really, my mission is about giving back and being really a contributing member of the community. And you can't be if you feel crappy and you're not sleeping and you just can't show up very well in the day.
That's a great point. We as caretakers and those who are lifters, who try to be lifters, we have to
I like that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
We have to, yeah, you're right. We have to be strong. We really have to take care of ourselves. And this goes for everyone. That it's that analogy of, when you're flying,
I was just going to say that.
The oxygen mask drops. What do they tell you to do? You put it on yourself first before you put it on your child or someone that's you're taking care of. So self-care for yourself is so important. So you have more to give to your families, to your communities, and to others, and whatever sort of calling that you're meant to do in this lifetime. So so important.
And it's really about prioritizing your self-care. And I think especially women have a hard time doing that because we are always nurturing and taking care of everyone else. And we put ourselves last. And we really, as you say, we need to put ourselves first. Put your mask on first, because otherwise you're not going to be there to really help others. And we see burnout, adrenal fatigue, so many symptomatic things show up that should be a signal. Hey, what am I doing that I could be doing better? And it's taking time for yourself. Right.
Yeah. Let's elaborate more on some ways that people can deal with stress in their lives, healthy ways they can cope. What are some of your suggestions for people?
So I call these interrupters. And here's the thing that I see with stress and anxiety: they actually become patterns of behavior, and it gets grooved. In the neurosciences, we learn that there's like these little grooves in your brain channels, neural pathways that you keep defaulting to. And so you have to interrupt that pattern to change it. So there's some really simple ways that you can do that. If you're at work, let's say, and you're starting to feel a little anxious about something that's coming up, you're doing an interview or whatever it is, just pausing and getting up, standing, taking a deep breath, stretching your arms, moving the energy through your body. And that's the other thing. I'm actually standing right now. I work at a standing desk. Sitting is not so good for you and can really create these blockages that stops the energetic flow. So just getting up and moving, walking around your office. And the big thing that I really highly recommend, and this is kind of my go-to, is deep breathing, taking slow, deep breaths to calm your nervous system.
It's interesting because I just was talking about what you said as far as the breathing in a challenge group that my wife and I are conducting on reducing sugar. And I talked about that as an interrupter. When you're feeling that urge to have something sweet, to focus on the breath, taking deep, full breaths, as you said, slowing the breath down. And also the third step was breathing in and out through the nose was recommended. Yeah. So those three easy points are really crucial, good foundational practice to add to your life. And it's so easy. We have to breathe. We breathe every day. We take about 25,000 breaths a day. So make them good ones. So it's great point.
Well, and that's a really good point, Ed, because most people, especially if they're stressed, they're breathing very shallowly. And it's really interesting. 70% of the body's toxins are released through our breathing. So if you're breathing shallowly, guess what's accumulating in your body? Not good. So yeah, you do want to take long, slow, deep breaths. And the other thing that's a really good interrupter, especially for anxiety as well as sugar cravings, is drink some water. Hydration. Dehydration can actually give you symptoms that are very similar to anxiety. So good idea throughout the day. And we all know this. It's so hard. Why is it so hard for people to drink the right amount of water every day? I mean, I know I struggle too, but I always have something to drink with me, whether I'm traveling or whether I'm in my office, and I just try to keep sipping all day long.
Right. Yeah, they recommend that we consume half our body weight in ounces a day to stay well hydrated. And I don't know if you know Dr. Zach Bush, but he believes, and I do too. I've seen it in my own practice, that almost everyone in our country are dehydrated. So
I agree.
we have to do a better job. So we're talking about some great foundational practices: hydration, sleep, breathing, nutrition would be probably another.
That was the next thing I was going to say. And in fact, there's a wonderful program that I'm in the middle of right now with John and Ocean Robbins. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think I sent you the link.
Yes.
It's called the Food Revolution Summit. And it is so eye-opening because there's so much new science that's come along to really educate us about foods and even food combinations. And absolutely, I mean, this is something I've been aware of. I trained with Mark Hyman in functional nutrition, and he started functional medicine and so forth. And so I learned early on when I was beginning to work with clients with stress and anxiety, how important food is, because certain foods can contribute to stress and anxiety, and other foods can actually help mitigate it. So you want to stay with healthier foods that are real foods, like an apple, the only ingredient, it's an apple.
Right.
Too many people eat processed foods, and that has all sorts of artificial stuff in it, and very often artificial sweeteners as well, which really is not good for brain health and can, again, really exacerbate stress, anxiety, and make you feel really crappy. So if you want to feel crappy, eat crappy food.
Right.
But if you want to feel like, a supercharged car, you want to really feed it good fuel. So the good fuel is a good balance of foods. And Dr. Mark Hyman often says, eat a lot of color,
Yes,
eat the rainbow. And
absolutely.
that really is true, because the more variety you have, the more you're developing your microbiome. And they really talk about gut health now as almost the new brain health. If your gut is not healthy, you're going to have, foggy brain, and you're not going to function properly.
Mhm. Yeah, I've done a lot of research on that. Dr. Bernard Jensen read his book, and he said that the bowel is king, and when you take care of the king, he'll take care of the kingdom. And in the Ayurvedic tradition, they also believe that system is the key to good health, and I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And in Ayurvedics, you actually learn how, by the time you actually see imbalances or diseases surfacing symptomatically, it's almost too late,
Right.
So you want to just get on a good course of eating more healthfully, more mindfully. And I always recommend with my clients, a lot of them get intimidated by so much information. But if you just start by adding, a nice mixed salad to every meal, or, your major meal of the day, just starting to incorporate more greens, more vegetables, more of the nutritious types of foods that are really going to boost your energy levels and help your body heal and function better.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And it's about taking baby steps. You you you're not going to jump to a place that is so far from where you are now, because you're setting yourself up to fail. But like you said, baby steps. Just add one little piece, maybe every day or every week, until you get to that point where you're feeling you're living a well-balanced life, eating a well-balanced diet. It's important. You talked about the grooves in a record. So kind of dating myself with talking about records, but those are those patterns.
Right.
They're always going to be there, but what we can do is create new grooves, new patterns to replace the old ones.
That's exactly right.
Mhm.
And I mean, from my own experience, especially with sugar addiction, Patrick, my life partner, loves to cook. He's the chef in the house. And it's really interesting, because when we first started living together and he was doing all the cooking, I wasn't paying attention to what he was using. And I started getting addicted. I started feeling this malaise. I couldn't think clearly. And I thought, what is going on? And then I realized that he was using things that were taboo for my microbiome. And so we really revamped that. And so that's an important aspect when somebody wants to take those baby steps. It's helpful to take it with your partners, with your family, with whoever you're living with, because that's going to be an influence as well. If they're bringing crap into the house, you're going to more likely be grabbing that. But if you both kind of commit to, look, and it's the 80-20 rule, I'm not saying be, totally vigilant, but just, 80% of the time, do try to eat a little more mindfully and healthfully, and 20% of the time, go ahead and, do whatever the heck you want. But it's again, part of that balance, and having family or friends supporting that, because I know, like, even in the past, when I used to go out with girlfriends and they'd all I didn't like to drink. I just wasn't a big drinker. And they'd have these margaritas and, oh, come on, have one, and they'd almost guilt you into it, to the point where I would start saying, I'm allergic. And then they would leave me alone. So it's important to be around people who will help encourage good behaviors and behaviors that are going to make you feel better and ultimately support you.
Absolutely. I like your 80-20 rule, because and this is something that we teach in our Reduce Sugar Challenge group. If you're going to have something, let's say you might say, once a week, I'm going to allow myself some sort of a treat. Make sure you enjoy it. Don't beat yourself up about it. And if you have a slip, don't beat yourself up about it. It's about the intention when you do have that 20%, and enjoy it, and just savor it. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. Mhm.
Great point. Absolutely. Because yeah, we're human, and it's nice to indulge, and we shouldn't be so strict with ourselves that we kind of get paranoid. Oh, wait, I can't touch that. That's the wrong thing for me. No, we have to, again, it's about balance. It's about developing just patterns that serve you better. And we're
Right.
all a little different. We all have different likes and dislikes. And so we have to manage that in a way that serves us the best. So once again, we can serve others better.
Right. I think the other coping mechanism, I know for me, and I know you're a tennis player, I believe is a really good one, is exercise. Would you agree with that?
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, that's really important to activate the body. And one of the things that I've actually been podcasting and writing about a lot lately is not just exercise, but also getting outside.
Yes.
Being in nature is
Absolutely.
so important and really feeds our spirit, feeds mind, body. It really helps make a difference. And it's interesting because there's a whole new trend now that doctors are actually prescribing to patients to spend time in a park or, go to the beach. And it seems kind of ironic, but we've gotten away from that. We all kind of migrated to big cities, and we got isolated from really the world that we live in and what nourishes us.
Right.
And so being back in nature, I mean, I know for myself, if I'm feeling stressed or uncomfortable, I'm fortunate enough to be close to the beach, and I can go take a walk along the Gulf of Mexico, and I no longer have any cares in the world because I just released it into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's gone.
That's,
It's reformed into something else.
That's right.
And it just makes a difference to access that. But again, everybody has to find for themselves what works for you, but make that part of your life, and maybe start out like every day taking maybe 10 minutes to take a break and do something like that. So it becomes a habit that you can default to that when you're really feeling stressed and really need a break. Because oftentimes when we get to that level, we can't remember what do we like to do or what makes us feel better because we're so out of sorts. So if you train yourself in just taking that time for yourself to do whatever it is you love, it may be reading a book, I have a rebounder in my office,
Oh yeah.
a little mini trampoline.
Yeah.
So I'll go get on that for 5 minutes, and that just really gets all the lymphatic flow going, and I feel great. So it's just finding what works for you and then using it,
Right.
just knowing that, oh yeah, I like that, but then never doing it obviously isn't going to help.
Right. We talked a little bit about many times it takes people to reach a crisis level or some sort of adversity in their life before they do something. Can you talk a little bit more about how adversity leads to breakthroughs? And I think this is something that came up for you recently, and
Yes.
to talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when we talk about stress and the fact that people don't recognize that they're at a stress level until they break, until something stops working, and then, oh my gosh, I have to go to the doctor. This is awful. I have to, deal with this terrible stomach issue that I have, or whatever it is that comes up. And then that adversity of that leads to an opening that actually gets them hopefully on a road to being healthier. So my experience, this was actually in the middle of the 2020 pandemic, and I was creating videos because nature is so calming and relaxing. Even seeing scenes of nature actually helps people de-stress. So I started creating a series called Mindfulness Moments from the Paradise Coast. And I started videoing different places around this amazing area that I live in Southwest Florida. So I did a swamp walk in the Everglades with a little meditation and things like that. So one of the things I did were the beaches, which I love. And there were these huge boulders, and on the top of this boulder was this beautiful snowy white egret. So I climbed up these boulders to video this egret, and I was like bonding with this egret. I mean, we were just inches apart, and I just felt so amazing, overlooking the Gulf, blue skies, the water, lapping on the white sandy beaches, and being able to just communicate with this egret. It was crazy, and I got great video. Only I went to descend, and my feet were wet and I slipped and I crashed down to the bottom of these huge boulders, and I didn't want to break my camera. So I stopped my fall with my left arm, and I really hurt. And I thought, wait, it's the middle of the pandemic. I am not going to the emergency room. I'm okay. I'll heal it. I'll get it. And there was a fisherman actually right there, and he had some ice in his bucket, and I put ice on it, and I thought, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Off I went home and was in agony all weekend. Monday, I went to get an x-ray, and I didn't just break it, I crushed it. I mean, there were just multiple breaks. And I am a tennis player, I'm a golfer. And I was told if I didn't have surgery, I would never play sports again. I would never be able to use that arm. And I had never had surgery in my life. And I used to ride motorcycles. I've broken my collarbone. I never had surgery. So this was really adversity for me. I hit bottom. First of all, the pain, having to have the surgery. I had nerve damage. So it was just horrible. Plus, Patrick works at a golf course, so he was gone 12, 13 hours a day because golf was still happening. And I was just kind of by myself. And, it was a time when I really spent doing all of my tools, my meditations, listening to healing music, eating properly, doing all the things that I could do to help myself feel better. I have a lot of healing machines, electrotherapy. I was doing it all. But I still mentally was trying to figure out, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because it was really stopping my whole life, my whole ability to do anything. And then one morning I woke up and this story started just coming through me. And I would go to the keyboard every morning and just start tapping the story out. And it literally downloaded. And it's a story about a woman who actually has a motorcycle accident. She's 45 years old. And when she wakes up from the coma, she starts questioning her whole life. Has she lived it all wrong? And it's her journey. And it takes her from, actually starts in Southwest Florida and takes her to the south of France and to London and to New York. And so it's kind of her journey. But the places in it are all real. I knew all the places, but the characters in the storyline was completely fictitious. Every morning I would get up, I'd be so excited to be able to get to my computer and find out what was going to happen next, because I had no clue. And Patrick would come home from work and he'd say, I'm getting really worried about you. You're spending way too much time alone. And I'd say, Patrick, are you kidding? I'm traveling the world with these amazing characters. So I was having a blast. And so out of all of that, I have my first fictional novel. I've won 3 National Book Awards. So Awakening, a novel, has, become a good selling story.
That's awesome.
And helps other people. And, it was a great escape for me. But I think so often when we go through bad things, we think we're stuck there, right, and we think it's never going to pass. And I always like to tell my clients, think of it like a storm. We know these storms come, there's lightning, there's thunder, it's overwhelming, but it passes. And so it's being aware that it passes. And then the second thing I always like to focus on, and that's what I did when I was going through all of this, is what am I supposed to learn from this? Right. What's the lesson in this? And there always is one. Sometimes we don't always know what it is, but there always is a growth, a spurt, because when you hit that place where you're starting to really question everything and you're seeing things differently and different things are happening to you, so you can't take anything for granted. Suddenly the world has changed, the pandemic has descended, everything has stopped, and you're broken, and so it really forces you to reevaluate, well, what are my values? What are my priorities? What is important? And frankly, that's something we each need to do on a regular basis. I recommend to my clients every quarter, stop and just kind of make a few notes. Where am I now? Where do I want to be? What's going on? What's working? What's not working? Just to be able to take that time out so you don't have to hit that rock bottom adversity. Right. You don't ever have to get there. And yet I will say that does propel us the most quickly through transition. Right. And I do feel like the pandemic has been that for a lot of people. Yes. I've seen so much growth in so many people. Yes, it's been stressful and painful and traumatic, and a lot of people are still recovering. But ultimately, there's been a paradigm shift. And one of the big things that I've worked on for the last 15 years is helping people with work-life balance. And in many ways, the pandemic helped really speed up how quickly we started addressing work-life balance, because we had to.
Yeah,
we had to start segmenting in our homes. Okay, what's our work side? What's our home family side? And we had to. So I think some really good things came out of a really bad event.
Absolutely. You know, as you said, adversity creates opportunity. And, you know, the pandemic did allow many people to take stock in what was important in their life and what is important in your life. And then a lot of people took action on that. They retired early. People moved to different parts of the country that they always wanted to. You know, as you know, my wife and I, we left Rhode Island. We're not going back. We're doing some things we've been talking about doing, and we said to ourselves, why wait? So there's a lot of people that are sort of on that same path. And as you said, that uncomfortability creates that opportunity for people to take the action.
Well, and it's also changing your mindset.
Right.
So people got comfortable seeing things in a certain way. This is how we always do this. This is how we always do that. And you just stay on that track and you never question it.
Right.
This made us question everything.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing that we all each need to do on a regular basis. And actually, you know, my sister went through that too. She was a diehard New Yorker. She's always lived in New York, had this fabulous place, which was my kind of New York, you know, place to go visit for many, many years. And she just sold it and moved to Boston, and completely different lifestyle. So it's interesting to see so many people embracing the opportunity, as you say. Some people see it as a challenge, but whatever, it moves you into another level, another chapter of your life, and you can make it what you want.
Absolutely. So to sort of wrap up our discussion about stress, anything else that you want to add before we close today?
Well, just that, again, the most important aspect of being able to manage stress better is getting aware of it. So it does help to maybe make notes about things that trigger you, and also be able to maybe exclude certain types of situations from your choice of events that you might want to do. In other words, some people might feel stressed going to, you know, a crowded gathering. So you don't have to choose not to do that. You know, you have choices, exercise them. And so I think that's really important, is to be able to really carve out what works for you the best, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. And it's within, you know, your realm. I mean, financially and physically, mentally, and so forth. You know, there's certain constraints sometimes, but it's being able to be open to the possibilities.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your wisdom and your experience, Peggy. And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do so?
Well, my website is mindbodyfitnessforlife.com. Or they can actually, you know, what I love to do is give your viewers a free download of my 3 minutes to de-stress. And it's just a 3-minute recording they can download to their smartphones and use that on a regular basis to just interrupt, you know, just take a time out, take a little breather. And so they can go to 3minutestodstress.com and download that.
Okay, I'll put that link with this video and on my social media platforms.
And the last thing I'll mention is I do have a book with over 100 different strategies to interrupt these patterns of stress and anxiety. And it's called Escape from Anxiety, Supercharge Your Life with Powerful Strategies from A to Z. And if you go to escapefromanxiety.com, you can download a chapter with 10 ways to really stop stress.
Awesome.
So just a few helpful support mechanisms. And of course, I do coaching. So if anyone wants to do a deeper dive, reach out, and I'm happy to help and work with you.
Awesome, Peggy. Well, again, I appreciate you sharing today, and I'm hoping that we help some people with this this topic and some great points that you made. So thanks again, Peggy.
Cardinal points.
Yes.
Thank you, Ed. No, I truly appreciate being here, and thank you for letting me share. That feels like my core mission. So
awesome.
Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. You're welcome. Have a great day.
You as well.
Bye.